Imagine you are living in the 13th century. You've got a nice little farm, a nice little cow, and a nice little wall around your city. You feel safe, but then you hear a rumble. Within just a few decades, a group of nomads from the freezing steppes of Asia would burst out of nowhere, conquering more land in 25 years than the Romans did in 400. They wiped out nearly 11% of the global population. Entire cities were erased from the map so completely that historians still can't find them today. This wasn't just an army, it was an apocalypse on horseback. Welcome back to Historically. Today we are looking at the bizarre, chaotic, and terrifying rise of the Mongol Empire. And stick around, because we're going to look at the weirdest weapons and tactics they used to pull this off. Before he was Genghis Khan, he was just a kid named Temujin. And let me tell you, his childhood was a disaster. When he was just 9, his father was poisoned by a rival tribe. How? By inviting him to a friendly dinner and slipping some toxic herbs into his drink, a classic ancient world party foul. Temujin's tribe immediately abandoned him, his mother, and his siblings to starve in the freezing wilderness. They had to survive by eating roots, wild berries, and whatever small rodents they could catch. But this brutal upbringing taught Temujin two things: trust absolutely no one, and never ever show mercy to your enemies. Through sheer charisma, political marriages, and a terrifying willingness to execute anyone who betrayed him, Temujin united the fractured nomadic tribes. In 1206, they held a massive council, and he was given a new title: Genghis Khan, the universal ruler. The deadliest war machine in human history was now switched on. So how did a bunch of guys on horses take over the known world? By using some of the most bizarre and genius tactics ever recorded. First off, their armor. You'd think they wore heavy steel, right? Wrong. Many wore armor made of hardened leather, and underneath, they wore tightly woven silk shirts. Why silk? Because if an enemy arrow hit them, the silk wouldn't tear. It would wrap around the arrowhead, entering the wound. The Mongol medic could then gently pull the silk to extract the arrow without ripping out chunks of flesh. But wait, it gets weirder. The Mongols were moving so fast across the plains that they didn't have time to stop and cook. If a rider was starving and dehydrated on a long march, he would make a small cut on his horse's neck and drink its blood straight from the vein while still riding. I know, absolutely disgusting, but incredibly efficient. They also pioneered psychological warfare. They used whistling arrows, arrows with hollowed-out bone whistles attached to them. When thousands of these were fired at once, it sounded like the sky was screaming. Enemies would drop their weapons and run in sheer terror before the Mongols even reached them. By 1258, Genghis Khan's grandson, Hulagu Khan, set his sights on Baghdad, the cultural and scientific capital of the Islamic Golden Age. The Caliph of Baghdad was confident. He thought, we have massive walls, we have a huge army. These horse boys don't stand a chance. He was wrong. The Mongols had conscripted Chinese siege engineers. They didn't just attack the walls. They completely dismantled the city. When the Mongols finally breached the gates, the destruction was so absolute that witnesses claimed the Tigris River ran black from the ink of millions of destroyed books, and then red from the blood of the scholars. But here is a bizarre historical detail for you. The Mongols believed that spilling royal blood on the earth was a massive sin that would anger the sky god. So they didn't chop off the caliph's head. Instead, they rolled him up in an expensive Persian rug and had their horses trample him to death. Technically, no blood hit the dirt. Loophole! The empire stretched from the borders of Poland all the way to Korea. It was the largest contiguous land empire in human history. But just like every massive empire, it got too big. The brothers and cousins started fighting over who got to be the boss. By the late 1200s, the empire fractured into 4 separate massive territories. The golden age of the Mongol war machine slowly ground to a halt, ending a terrifying chapter of history that forever changed the genetic and political map of the world. And that was the chaotic, deadly history of the Mongol Empire. If you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting that like button. It truly helps us out. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.